Hello. My name is Tom, and for the past 8 years, I had thought my marriage to Claire was unbreakable. We were high school sweethearts who had beaten the odds. Two people who had managed to build a life together from practically nothing. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always believed our love was stronger than anything else. I was wrong. Started about a year ago, Claire began to change. She became restless, dissatisfied, always wanting more. More vacations, more nights out, more luxury. We never had much, but we were happy with what we had, or at least I thought we were. I was working long hours at my construction job, trying to save up for a house that Claire had her eye on, but it was never enough. She wanted the kind of life that other people seem to have, the kind of life you see in magazines or on social media. And slowly, it started to become clear that she wanted something, or someone, more than me. I didn't see it coming, not really. I had noticed her pulling away, becoming more distant, but I had chalked it up to stress. She had been spending more time out with her friends, going to new places, meeting new people. I thought she was just finding herself, finding what made her happy. I wanted her to be happy, even if it meant giving her space. I never imagined that her quest for happiness would lead her to someone else. Then, one night, everything changed. She came home late, her face flushed, her eyes avoiding mine. She walked into the living room, her movements hesitant, and I could feel that something was wrong. "Tom," she said, her voice shaky, her eyes refusing to meet mine. "I need to talk to you." I looked up from the couch, my heart sinking. "What's going on, Claire?" I asked, my voice filled with worry. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she twisted her wedding ring around her finger. I'm leaving," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've met someone else, and I think it's time for us to move on." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, the air leaving my lungs as I tried to make sense of what she had just said. "What?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "You're leaving me?" She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm sorry, Tom," she said, her voice trembling, "but I've found someone else. Someone who can give me the life I want. I'm not happy anymore, and I can't keep pretending." I stared at her, my heart breaking. The woman I loved more than anything in the world standing in front of me, telling me that she was leaving. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "His name is Richard," she said softly, her eyes flicking up to meet mine for just a moment before she looked away again. "He's wealthy. He can give me the life I've always dreamed of. I know this is going to hurt you, and I'm so sorry, but I can't stay." The pain was overwhelming, a mixture of betrayal, disbelief, and sadness all crashing into me at once. "So that's it," I said, my voice filled with anger and hurt. "You're leaving me for someone with more money? After everything we've been through?" She looked down, her tears falling. "It's not just about the money," she whispered. "It's about the life I want. I need more than what we have, Tom. I need more than what you can give me." I shook my head, my heart breaking. "I love you, Claire," I said, my voice cracking. "I've always loved you. I've worked so hard to give you everything you wanted. And now you're just walking away." She took a step forward, her face filled with regret. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I wish things could be different. But I need to do this. I need to be happy." And just like that, she walked out. She packed her bags, tears streaming down her face, and she left. I watched her go, my heart breaking. The woman I had loved for most of my life walking out of our home, leaving me with nothing but the memories of what we had once been. The next few weeks were a blur. I went through the motions of my life, working long hours, trying to keep myself busy, trying to ignore the empty house, the silence that had replaced the laughter that used to fill our home. My friends tried to help, tried to get me out, to distract me, but nothing seemed to work. I couldn't get past the image of Claire walking out the door, couldn't let go of the love I still felt for her, even after everything she had done. I knew she was with him, Richard. I had heard about him from some mutual friends, heard about the fancy dinners, the expensive vacations, the new life she was living. It hurt, knowing that she had found happiness with someone else, knowing that she had chosen a life of luxury over the life we had built together. But what hurt even more was the fact that I still loved her, that I still missed her every single day. Months passed, and slowly, I started to put myself back together. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects, working weekends. I started going to the gym again, trying to take care of myself, trying to find a sense of purpose. It wasn't easy, and there were still days when the pain was overwhelming, when I couldn't get out of bed, when the memories of Claire were too much to bear. But I kept going, kept moving forward, one day at a time. Then one day everything changed again. It was a Thursday evening, and I had just gotten home from work. I was exhausted, covered in dirt and sweat from a long day on the job site. As I walked up to the front door, I noticed a figure sitting on the steps, their head down, their shoulders slumped. Took me a moment to realize who it was, and when I did, my heart stopped. "Claire," I said, my voice filled with disbelief. She looked up, her eyes red and puffy, her face streaked with tears. "Tom," she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't know where else to go. I stared at her, my heart pounding, a mix of emotions flooding over me. Anger, sadness, confusion, and most of all, love. Even after everything, even after all the pain she had caused me, seeing her there, broken and vulnerable, made my heart ache for her. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice cracking. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she wiped her tears away. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I thought I wanted that life, but it wasn't real. It was all just superficial. Richard, he wasn't who I thought he was. When his money ran out, everything fell apart. He was only interested in me as long as he had something to show off. And now I have nothing. I have nowhere to go. And I know I don't deserve it. But I need you, Tom." Her words hung in the air between us, and I felt my heart breaking all over again. She had left me for someone else, had chosen wealth and luxury over the love we had shared, and now she was back, asking for another chance. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, to tell her that she had made her choice and now she had to live with it. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, still missed her every day, wanted to pull her into my arms, to tell her that everything would be okay, that we could find our way back to each other. "Why now?" I asked, my voice filled with pain. "Why, after all this time, after everything you put me through?" She looked down, her tears falling again. "Because I realized what I lost," she whispered. "I realized that you were the only one who ever really loved me, who ever really cared about me. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. Please, Tom. I'm so sorry." I stood there, the weight of her words pressing down on me. The woman I had loved more than anything in the world standing in front of me, broken and begging for another chance. I didn't know what to do, didn't know if I could ever forgive her, if I could ever trust her again. But as I looked at her, saw the pain in her eyes, the regret that she carried with her, I realized that, despite everything, I still loved her. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to take the first step toward healing. After that night on the porch, things changed between Claire and me. I told her she could come inside, just to get cleaned up, just to figure out what she was going to do next. I wasn't making any promises. My heart was still raw from everything she'd put me through, and I didn't know if I could ever fully forgive her. But I couldn't just leave her sitting out there, alone and broken. She stepped through the door with hesitation, as if afraid she might break something just by being there. I watched her, the way she looked around the house, her eyes lingering on the photos on the walls, the furniture that had been ours. It was like she was seeing everything for the first time in years. She ran her fingers over the picture frames, her face a mixture of sadness and regret. "Do you want something to eat?" I asked, my voice tight. I didn't know what else to say, and I needed something to break the heavy silence between us. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and grateful. "If you don't mind, I'd love that," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I made us sandwiches, nothing fancy. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence stretching between us like an invisible wall. Claire kept glancing at me, Her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. It felt like she wanted to say something, but she didn't know how. And honestly, I didn't know if I was ready to hear it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "Tom, I know I've hurt you in ways that I can never take back," she said, her voice trembling. "I made a terrible mistake, and I lost everything that mattered to me. I need you to know that I regret it every single day." I looked at her, the words hitting me like a punch to the gut. "You left me, Claire," I said, my voice breaking. "You left me for someone else because you thought he could give you a better life. You chose money over love, and now you're back because that didn't work out. What am I supposed to do with that?" She looked down, her tears spilling onto the table. "I know," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve anything from you. But I came back because I realized what I had lost. I realized that the life I thought I wanted wasn't real. The only real thing I ever had was you. I wanted to stay angry. I wanted to hold on to the pain, to keep her at arm's length so she couldn't hurt me again. But seeing her sitting there, her face streaked with tears, I felt the anger begin to soften, replaced by something else. I still loved her. No matter how much she had hurt me, that love hadn't gone away. It had been buried beneath the pain, but it was still there, waiting. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," I said finally, my voice cracking. "I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were." Claire nodded, her tears falling faster. "I understand," she whispered. "And I'm not asking for everything to be fixed overnight. I'm not even asking you to take me back. I just want a chance to show you that I've changed. That I made a mistake, but I've learned from it. Please, Tom, I'm asking for a chance to make things right." I looked at her, my heart aching. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, to tell her that she had made her choice and now she had to live with it. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to give her that chance. Wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. "Okay," I said finally, my voice barely audible. "You can stay here for now. But I'm not making any promises, Claire. This isn't a free pass. If you want me to even consider giving us another shot, you have to prove that you've changed. You have to show me that you're willing to fight for us." Her face lit up, her eyes wide with hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Thank you, Tom. I promise I'll do whatever it takes." I nodded, my heart heavy. "We'll see," I said. "It's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of work." The first few days were awkward, to say the least. Claire stayed in the guest room and we barely spoke. It felt like we were strangers living in the same house, both unsure of how to bridge the gap between us. She tried to help around the house, cleaning, cooking, anything she could do to show that she was serious about making things right. But I kept my distance, not ready to let her back in just yet. Then, one night, I found her sitting on the porch, staring out at the stars. She looked so lost, so small, and something in me softened. I stepped outside, sitting down beside her. She looked over at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I miss us," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I miss the way we used to be, the way we could just sit here and talk for hours about nothing and everything. I threw it all away because I thought I wanted something better. But the truth is, I had everything I ever needed, and I was too blind to see it." Her words hit me hard, and I felt the tears welling up in my eyes. "I miss us too," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I miss the life we had, but I don't know if we can ever get back to that place. Claire, you hurt me in ways I can't even put into words." She reached for my hand, her fingers trembling as she touched mine. "I know," she whispered, "and I don't expect you to just forgive me and forget. I just want a chance to show you that I'm still the woman you fell in love with, that I can be better, that we can be better." I looked at her, my heart aching. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that there was still something between us worth saving. But the fear was still there. The fear of getting hurt again, of letting her back in only to have her walk away once more. "I don't know," I said finally, my voice cracking. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." She nodded, her tears falling. "I understand," she whispered. But I'm not going anywhere, Tom. I'm going to fight for us, for you, for the life we had. And I hope, one day, you'll be able to forgive me. We sat there in silence, the night sky stretching out above us, the weight of everything between us pressing down. It wasn't a resolution, and it wasn't a promise that everything would be okay. But it was a step toward understanding, toward healing, even if it was a small one. In the days that followed, Claire continued to try to prove herself. She got a job, something simple but steady, and started contributing to the household again. She was trying to show me that she was serious about rebuilding, that she was committed to making things right. And slowly, I started to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who used to laugh at my stupid jokes, who would dance around the kitchen with me, who made me believe in love. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect. There were still moments when the pain resurfaced, when I found myself questioning if I was doing the right thing by letting her stay. But each time those doubts crept in, I would remember the way she looked at me that night on the porch, the way her eyes filled with regret and love, and I knew that I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. We had a long road ahead of us, a road filled with uncertainty and pain. But as I looked at Claire, her face filled with determination, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick. But if we were both willing to fight for it, maybe there was still hope. The days turned into weeks, and Claire continued to stay at the house. It was still awkward at times, the silence between us often heavy with all the things left unsaid. But I could see that she was trying, really trying, to make things right. She got up early every day, made breakfast, and left for work with a determination I hadn't seen in her before. She was working as a cashier at a local grocery store, and while it was nothing glamorous, she seemed genuinely grateful to have the chance to contribute again. One Friday evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find Claire in the kitchen. She was cooking dinner, something that she used to love doing for us before everything fell apart. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the house, and for a moment, I was transported back to the days when life was simple, when we were just two people in love, making dinner together, sharing our lives. "Hey," she said, looking up as I walked in. She gave me a small, nervous smile. "I thought I'd make us dinner tonight. I hope that's okay." I nodded, my heart tight. "Yeah, that's fine," I said, my voice softer than I intended. I took a deep breath, trying to push past the emotions that were bubbling up inside me. I could see the hope in her eyes, the way she was trying to rebuild what we had lost, brick by brick. We sat down to eat, the clinking of silverware on plates filling the silence between us. It felt like we were both waiting for something, some kind of sign that it was okay to let our guards down, that it was okay to be vulnerable with each other again. I looked at Claire, her eyes focused on her plate, her shoulders tense, and I felt a pang of sadness. I missed the way we used to be, the way we could talk about anything, laugh about everything. I missed the ease of it, the comfort of being with someone who knew me better than anyone else. "Thank you for dinner," I said finally, my voice breaking the silence. "It's really good." She looked up, her eyes wide with surprise, and then she smiled. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in a long time. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm just glad we're having dinner together again. I've missed this." I nodded, my heart aching. "I've missed it too," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Claire sat on the couch, and I hesitated for a moment before sitting down beside her. It felt like a small victory, being close to her again without the tension that had hung between us for so long. We turned on the TV, flipping through channels until we found an old sitcom we used to watch together. It felt almost normal, almost like the life we had before everything fell apart. Halfway through the show, Claire turned to me, her eyes filled with emotion. "Tom," she said softly, her voice trembling, "I know it's going to take time, and I know I have a lot to prove, but I just want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep fighting for us, for you, for the life we had. I love you, and I'm so sorry for everything." I looked at her, the sincerity in her eyes making my heart ache. I could see how much she regretted what she had done, how much she wanted to make things right. And I realized that, despite everything, I wanted that too. I wanted to find a way to move forward, to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. "I know you're trying," I said, my voice cracking. "And I appreciate that, Claire. It's not going to be easy, and I don't know if we'll ever be the same. But I'm willing to try if you are." Her face lit up, her eyes filling with tears. "Really?" she whispered, her voice filled with hope. I nodded, my heart heavy but hopeful. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'm willing to try." Claire reached for my hand, her fingers trembling as they touched mine. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you for giving me a chance." We sat there, holding each other's hands, the weight of everything we had been through pressing down on us. It wasn't a solution, and it wasn't a promise that everything would be okay. But it was a step toward healing, toward rebuilding the life we had once shared. The next few weeks were filled with more small steps. Claire continued to work hard, both at her job and at home. She made it a point to be open with me, to share her day, her thoughts, her feelings. It was like she was letting me see the parts of her that she had kept hidden for so long, the parts that had made her feel lost and disconnected. And slowly, I started to let her back in, to see the parts of me that were still hurt, still scared. One Saturday, Claire suggested that we go for a drive. Just the two of us, with no destination in mind. It was something we used to do all the time, back when we were young and carefree. We'd get in the car, pick a direction, and just drive, talking about anything and everything along the way. I hesitated at first, unsure if I was ready for that kind of intimacy again. But as I looked at her, her eyes filled with hope, I realized that I wanted to try. "Okay," I said, giving her a small smile. "Let's do it." We got in the car, and as we drove, the tension between us began to ease. We talked about our memories, the good times we had shared, the places we had been. It felt like we were reconnecting, like we were finding our way back to each other, 1 mile at a time. At one point, we pulled over at a small overlook, the view stretching out before us. The sky painted in shades of orange and pink as the sun began to set. We got out of the car, standing side by side, the wind blowing gently around us. Claire looked at me, her eyes filled with emotion. "Tom," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the wind. "I know I've hurt you, and I know I can't take back what I did, but I want you to know that I love you, more than anything, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make things right." I looked at her, my heart swelling with a mix of love and pain. "I love you too," I said, my voice cracking, "and I want to move forward with you. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to fight for us." She smiled, her tears spilling over, and she reached for my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. "That's all I want," she whispered, "a chance to fight for us." We stood there, holding each other, the sun dipping below the horizon, the sky darkening around us. It wasn't a perfect ending, and it wasn't a guarantee that everything would be okay. But it was a beginning, a new chapter in our story, one that we were writing together one step at a time. In the weeks that followed, we continued to rebuild one small step at a time. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the pain of the past would resurface, but those moments were becoming less frequent. And each time they did, we faced them together. Claire was patient, always willing to listen, always willing to reassure me that she was here, that she wasn't going anywhere. One evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the stars, Claire turned to me, her eyes filled with hope. "Do you think we'll ever really be okay again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, my heart swelling with love. "I think we're getting there," I said softly. "It's not perfect, and it's not going to be easy, but I think we're on the right path." She smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "I want us to be better than we were before," she whispered. "I want us to build something even stronger." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "And we will," I said, "one day at a time." As we sat there, holding each other, I realized that love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about choosing each other, every day, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. It was about forgiveness, about growth, about being willing to face the challenges together. Claire and I had been broken, but we were also stronger now. We were more honest, more open, more willing to fight for the love we still shared. And as I held her close, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together. One day at a time, one step at a time. It had been months since Claire came back, and while we had made progress, there were still shadows of the past that lingered over us. The pain of her leaving, the betrayal I had felt, still reared its head from time to time. It wasn't something that could just disappear overnight, and I think Claire understood that better than anyone. She knew that she had to earn my trust back, and she was willing to put in the work. One evening, as we were having dinner, Claire looked up at me, her expression serious. "Tom," she began, her voice a bit shaky, "I think it's time we talked about everything. Really talked about it." I put my fork down, a knot forming in my stomach. I knew what she meant. We had never really gone into the details of why she left or what happened when she was with Richard. We had both avoided the subject, tiptoeing around it because it hurt too much. But maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to face it, to let it all out in the open. "Okay," I said finally, my voice softer than I intended. "Let's talk." Claire took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I know I've told you before that I regret everything, and I do, but I also know that's not enough. You deserve to know why I did what I did," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I want to be honest with you, Tom, completely honest." I nodded, my heart heavy. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear it, but I knew I needed to. I needed to understand why she had made the choices she did if I ever hoped to move on. "It wasn't about you," she said, her voice cracking. "It was never about you. I think deep down I was unhappy with myself. I felt like I wasn't enough, like I wasn't living up to what I thought my life should be. And when Richard came along, offering this fantasy, this life that seemed so glamorous and exciting, I let myself get swept up in it. I thought it was what I wanted. I thought it would make me happy." She looked down, tears spilling onto her hands. "But I was wrong. It was all superficial. The fancy dinners, the vacations, the money, it didn't mean anything. I was miserable, and I realized that what I wanted wasn't a life filled with luxury. It was you. It was the love we had, the life we had built together." I swallowed hard, the pain in my chest making it hard to breathe. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Why didn't you come to me before it got to that point? I would have done anything for you, Claire." She looked up, her eyes filled with regret. "I was scared," she whispered. "I was scared of admitting that I was unhappy. I was scared of being vulnerable, of letting you see that I was struggling. And by the time I realized what I was doing, it felt like it was too late. I had already made my choice, and I didn't know how to come back from it." I looked at her, my heart aching with a mix of love and pain. I could see the regret in her eyes, the weight of everything she had done pressing down on her. And I realized that she wasn't just asking for my forgiveness. She was asking for her own. "I don't know if I can ever forget what happened," I said finally, my voice cracking. "But I want to try to forgive you. I want to move forward with you. It's not going to be easy, and there will be days when the past still hurts. But I love you, Claire, and I'm willing to fight for us, if you are." Her face crumpled, her tears falling faster now. "I am," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I love you, Tom, and I will spend every day fighting for us. For you. I promise." We sat there in silence, the weight of everything we had just said hanging between us. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't a magical fix, but it was a start toward healing, toward moving forward. In the weeks that followed, things began to shift between us. There was an openness that hadn't been there before, a willingness to face the past instead of avoiding it. We began talking more about our fears, our hopes, our dreams. It was like we were getting to know each other all over again, building a new foundation for our relationship. One weekend, Claire suggested that we take a trip to the coast, a place we had always loved but hadn't visited in years. It was a place filled with good memories, and I think we both needed that. We needed to remember who we were before everything fell apart. We packed up the car and drove down to the coast, the air filled with the scent of salt and seaweed as we got closer. Claire rolled down the window, letting the breeze whip through her hair, a smile spreading across her face. "I've missed this," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "I've missed us." I looked over at her, my heart swelling with emotion. "I have too," I said softly. "Maybe this is exactly what we need." We spent the weekend walking along the beach, talking about everything and nothing. We watched the sun set over the ocean, the sky turning shades of pink and orange, the waves crashing against the rocks below. It felt like we were finding our way back to each other, one step at a time. One night, as we sat on the beach, Claire turned to me, her eyes filled with emotion. "Do you think we'll ever really be okay again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, my heart aching. "I think we're getting there," I said softly. "It's not perfect, and it never will be, but we're trying. And that's enough for me." She smiled, her tears glistening in the moonlight, and she leaned in, resting her head on my shoulder. "I love you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I love you too," I replied, my own tears spilling over. "And I'm not giving up on us." The following weeks were filled with more small moments. Moments that reminded us why we were fighting for each other. We went on more drives, took more walks, spent more time just being with each other. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending that everything was okay. It was about choosing each other every day, despite the pain, despite the hurt. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch, Claire looked over at me, her eyes filled with hope. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, my heart heavy but hopeful. "I do," I said. "I think about what it would be like to build a life together again, to have a home, maybe a family. I think about all the things we still have ahead of us, if we're willing to fight for it." She smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want us to keep moving forward, to keep building something beautiful." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Then that's what we'll do," I said softly. "One day at a time." As we sat there, the weight of everything we had been through pressing down on us, I realized that love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about choosing each other every day, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. It was about forgiveness, about growth, about being willing to face the challenges together. We had been broken, but we were also stronger now. We were more honest, more open, more willing to fight for the love we still shared. And as I held Claire close, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together. One day at a time, one step at a time. Life started to feel more hopeful after our trip to the coast. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was a sense of possibility. A feeling that, despite everything, maybe we could still build something beautiful together. The shadows of the past still lingered, but they no longer felt so overpowering. We had faced them, talked about them, and now we were slowly letting them go. Claire continued to prove herself every day. She was patient, understanding when I needed space, and always willing to talk when I needed reassurance. She never pushed me, never demanded that I move on faster than I was ready to. She understood that the pain of her leaving wasn't something that could just be brushed aside. It would take time, and she was willing to wait. It was this patience, this dedication, that made me start to believe in her again. One day, after a long shift, I came home to find Claire in the backyard, setting up a small garden. She had always loved gardening. One of her dreams had been to have a little vegetable patch of her own, a place where she could grow fresh herbs and vegetables for our meals. I watched her from the back door, her hands dirty, her face flushed with effort, and I felt a pang in my chest. It was like seeing a glimpse of the Claire I had fallen in love with all those years ago. The Claire who found joy in the simple things, who wanted to build something meaningful. I walked over to her, my heart swelling with emotion. "What are you working on?" I asked, my voice soft. She looked up, her face lighting up with a smile. "I thought I'd start a garden," she said, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. I know it's not much yet, but I thought it would be nice to have something to take care of together. A fresh start, you know? I nodded, my chest tightening with emotion. I like that idea, I said quietly. I think it's a good start. She smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. Do you want to help? She asked, her voice filled with hope. I nodded, kneeling down beside her. Yeah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'd love to. We spent the rest of the afternoon working in the garden, digging up soil, planting seeds, and planning out where we wanted everything to go. It was hard work, but it felt good, like we were building something together, something that would grow and flourish, just like we were trying to do with our relationship. As the sun began to set, we stood back, looking at what we had created, and I felt a sense of pride, a sense of hope. Claire looked over at me, her eyes filled with emotion. Thank you, Tom, she said softly, for giving me a chance, for letting me be here. I know it's not easy, and I know I have a long way to go to earn back your trust. But I'm so grateful that you're willing to try. I looked at her, my heart aching. I want us to be okay again, I said, my voice cracking. I want us to find our way back to each other. I know it's not going to be easy, but I think we're getting there. One day at a time. She nodded, her tears spilling over, and she reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. That's all I want, she whispered. A chance to be better, a chance to make things right. In the days that followed, we continued to work on the garden. It became our little project, something we did together in the evenings after work. We'd come home, change into old clothes, and head out to the backyard, tending to the plants, talking about our day, and making plans for the future. It felt like we were building something that was ours, something that symbolized the love and effort we were putting into our relationship. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the garden, Claire turned to me, her eyes filled with hope. Tom, she said softly, her voice trembling. I've been thinking. I know we're not where we used to be, and I know it's going to take time. But I want to start planning for the future again. I want us to have something to look forward to. I looked at her, my heart swelling with love. What kind of future are you thinking about? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. I want us to build a home together, she said, her voice cracking. A real home, not just a house, but a place that's filled with love, with laughter, with everything we've fought so hard to get back. I want us to have a family, to build a life that's filled with joy. I know it's not going to be easy, and I know it's going to take time, but I want to start dreaming again. Her words hit me like a wave, and I felt the tears welling up in my eyes. It wasn't something I had let myself think about for a long time. The idea of a future with Claire, of a family, of the life we had once dreamed of. But as I looked at her, her eyes filled with hope and determination, I realized that I wanted that too. I wanted to build a life with her, to have something that represented all the love and effort we had put into making our relationship work. I want that too, I said softly, my voice cracking. I want us to build something beautiful together. It's not going to be easy, but I think we're ready. I think we're finally in a place where we can start dreaming again. Claire's face lit up, her tears spilling over as she leaned in, wrapping her arms around me. Thank you, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Thank you for giving me a chance to make this right, for giving us a chance to build something new. I held her close, my own tears falling, the weight of everything we had been through pressing down on us. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending that everything was perfect. It was about building something new, something better, something that represented all the love, pain, and hope that we had shared. In the weeks that followed, we started talking about what we wanted for our future. We began making plans, looking at houses, and dreaming about the life we wanted to build together. There was a sense of hope between us, a feeling that, despite everything, we were finally moving forward. One day, as we were driving through a neighborhood, we saw a house for sale, a charming little place with a garden in the front yard and a picket fence. Claire looked over at me, her eyes wide with excitement. What do you think? She asked, her voice filled with hope. I looked at the house, my heart swelling with emotion. It wasn't perfect, it needed work, and it wasn't as big as some of the other houses we had looked at. But it felt right. It felt like a place where we could build a life together, a place where we could start over. I think it's perfect, I said softly, my voice cracking. Let's do it. Claire's face lit up, her tears spilling over as she reached for my hand. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for believing in us. We made an offer on the house, and within weeks, it was ours. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to build something from the ground up, something that was entirely ours. We spent our weekends painting, fixing up the garden, making it our own. It was hard work, but it was the kind of work that brought us closer, that reminded us why we were fighting for each other. One night, as we sat in our new living room, the walls freshly painted, the furniture still sparse, Claire turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. Tom, she said softly, her voice trembling. I know it's taken us a long time to get here, and I know we still have a long way to go, but I love you. I love you so much, and I'm so grateful that you've given me this chance. I looked at her, my heart aching with both love and pain. I love you too, I said softly, my voice cracking, and I'm so glad we're here. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And that's enough for me. She smiled, her tears spilling over, and she leaned in, pressing her lips to mine in a gentle, tender kiss. It wasn't about passion. It was about love, about connection, about choosing each other despite everything we had been through. As we sat there, holding each other, the weight of everything we had been through pressing down on us, I realized that this was what love was. Choosing each other, every day, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. It was about forgiveness, about growth, about being willing to face the challenges together. We had been through hell, but we had come out on the other side stronger, more honest, more willing to fight for the love we still shared. And as I held Claire close, I knew that whatever the future held, whatever challenges, whatever joys, whatever heartaches, we would face it together. It wasn't the fairy tale we had once imagined, but it was real, it was raw, and it was ours. The day we moved into our new house felt like a dream, one I had never expected to come true, especially after everything we had been through. The house wasn't perfect. The walls needed painting, the garden was overgrown, and there were 100 little things that needed fixing. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that it was ours, a place where we could start over. Claire was radiant that day, her excitement infectious. She wore an old pair of jeans and a paint-stained t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, and she had a smile on her face that I hadn't seen in years. She looked happy, genuinely happy, and seeing her like that made my heart swell with love. It reminded me of the girl I had fallen in love with, the girl who was full of life, who laughed at my jokes, who dreamed big dreams. Let's start in the kitchen, she said, her eyes sparkling as she looked around. I think it'll be the heart of our home. I want it to be perfect. I nodded, my heart heavy but hopeful. I think that's a great idea, I said, giving her a small smile. Let's make it ours. We spent the day unpacking boxes, cleaning, and making plans for the house. We painted the walls a soft shade of blue, hung up old photographs that we had taken on our travels, and started organizing the kitchen. It was exhausting work, but it was the kind of exhaustion that felt good, the kind that came from building something with love. As the sun began to set, we stood in the kitchen, looking at what we had accomplished. It wasn't finished, but it was a start. Claire looked over at me, her eyes filled with emotion. Tom, she said softly, her voice cracking, thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance, for believing in us. I looked at her, my heart aching. I love you, Claire, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, and I want us to build a life together. I know it's not going to be easy, and I know we still have a long way to go, but I'm willing to fight for us. She smiled, her tears spilling over, and she reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. I love you too, she whispered, and I promise I'm going to do everything I can to make this right, to be the partner you deserve. We stood there, holding each other, the kitchen filled with the soft glow of the evening light. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And that was enough. In the following weeks, we continued to make the house our home. We painted, fixed, planted, and decorated, and slowly, it began to feel like a reflection of us. A place that was full of love, of hope, of the life we were building together. It was hard work, but it was the kind of work that brought us closer. We laughed, we argued, we made mistakes, but we always came back to each other, always reminded ourselves why we were doing this. One night, after a particularly long day of painting, Claire and I sat on the porch, a couple of beers in our hands, the stars twinkling above us. She looked over at me, her eyes filled with love. "Do you remember the first time we talked about getting a house?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, a smile tugging at my lips. "Yeah," I said. "We were just kids back then, sitting in your parents' backyard, dreaming about the future. We thought we'd have it all figured out by now." She laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Yeah, we were so naive," she said, her eyes twinkling. "But I guess that's part of the journey, right? Learning, growing, making mistakes. And now, here we are, finally making it happen." I looked at her, my heart swelling with love. "Yeah," I said softly. "Here we are." She leaned in, her forehead resting against mine. "I love you, Tom," she whispered, "and I'm so proud of us. I know we've been through hell, but I think it's made us stronger." I closed my eyes, the tears welling up. "I love you too, Claire," I whispered, "and I think you're right. We're stronger now. We're not perfect, but we're fighting for each other. And that's what matters." She smiled, her tears spilling over, and she kissed me, soft, gentle, filled with love. It wasn't about passion or about forgetting what had happened. It was about connection, about choosing each other despite everything we had been through. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, life began to settle into a new kind of normal. We finished decorating the house, planted a garden in the backyard, and started to make plans for the future. We talked about starting a family, about the kind of life we wanted to build together. It felt like we were finally moving forward, like we were finally letting go of the past. One afternoon, as we were sitting in the garden, Claire turned to me, her eyes filled with hope. "Tom," she said softly, her voice trembling, "I know it's taken us a long time to get here, and I know it hasn't been easy, but I think we've finally found our way back to each other. I think we're finally where we're supposed to be." I looked at her, my heart aching with love. "I think so too," I said, my voice cracking. "It's not perfect, and it never will be, but we're here, and that's enough." She smiled, her tears spilling over, and she leaned in, resting her head on my shoulder. "I'm so grateful for you," she whispered, "for your love, for your patience, for giving me this chance." I wrapped my arm around her, holding her close. "And I'm grateful for you," I said softly, "for coming back, for fighting for us, for never giving up." As we sat there, the garden blooming around us, the sun setting in the distance, I realized that love wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about forgiveness, about growth, about choosing each other every day, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. Claire and I had been through hell, but we had come out on the other side stronger, more honest, more willing to fight for the love we still shared. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't the life we had once imagined. But it was real, it was raw, and it was ours. And as I looked at Claire, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the evening light, I knew that this was the life I wanted. The life we had fought for. The life we had built together, one day at a time. We had been broken, but we had also been remade. Stronger, more resilient, more committed to each other. And as we sat there, holding each other, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together, with love, with hope, and with an unwavering commitment to each other. Because in the end, that's what mattered most. Choosing each other, every day, no matter what. Bye-bye.